Kensington Palace Kitchen, 3:17 a.m., August 1993. Chef Darren McGrady enters through the service door and stops cold. Princess Diana stands at the stove in a Harvard sweatshirt, barefoot, cooking eggs she'll never eat. Her hands move with practiced precision, but they're shaking. On the marble counter beside her, a handwritten note on blue Smythson stationery, half finished. Behind her, untouched platters from the royal dinner sit cold. Protocol screams at McGrady to leave, to pretend he never saw the people's princess cooking alone at 3 a.m. with mascara-streaked cheeks. But she looks up. 6 words cut through the sizzle of butter. I need you to remember something. The note isn't for the public. It's for her sons, one of 47 she'd write in 6 months. McGrady realizes this isn't the first 3 a.m. visit. Kitchen logs would later prove she'd been coming here for months, cooking, writing, documenting, preparing. What she told him that night stayed buried for 15 years, until he finally broke his silence. By late 1992, Diana's separation from Prince Charles became official, announced to a world that thought they knew the whole story. They didn't. Kensington Palace transformed from home to gilded cage, part sanctuary, part prison. Palace staff noticed her wandering at night, footsteps echoing through corridors when everyone else slept. The kitchen became her refuge, the only room without surveillance cameras, without rigid protocol. McGrady, who'd cook for the Queen herself, watched Diana unravel in ways the public never saw. Her bulimia was documented in Andrew Morton's biography, but what he witnessed went deeper. She wasn't just struggling with food, she was preparing for something. In her private study, sealed envelopes accumulated in neat stacks, blue stationery, careful handwriting, specific addresses. Some bore her sons' names. Others read, "To whomever finds this." The letters looked emotional, therapeutic even. They weren't. They were strategic insurance, and McGrady was about to become her witness. Diana's patterns solidified through 1993. Public charity work during daylight, visiting hospitals, holding AIDS patients' hands, defying royal protocol with genuine warmth. Then private collapse after dark. 3 a.m. became her office hours. McGrady learned to leave ingredients accessible, stay quietly available. She'd cook elaborate meals with therapeutic precision, then leave them untouched. The motion mattered, not the consumption. This was the year she withdrew from public life temporarily, citing pressure and exhaustion. What the press didn't report? The handwritten notes multiplying in kitchen drawers, on counters, tucked behind appliances. Some addressed to William and Harry, tender and heartbreaking. Others marked, "Whomever finds this," clinical and detailed. The blue Smythson stationery carried her signature scent, Quelque Fleur perfume, subtle and expensive. McGrady found notes describing conversations, naming participants, recording dates and locations. She wasn't venting. She was documenting, building a record of something specific, something she believed would matter later. The therapeutic writing her psychiatrist recommended had evolved into evidence gathering, and the kitchen had become her archive. August 1993, 3:22 a.m. Diana sits across from McGrady at the prep counter, note in hand, and tells him about the arrangement. The palace knows about her late-night visits. They tolerate them as containment strategy. Better she breaks down privately in the kitchen than publicly in Kensington Gardens. Her psychiatrist did recommend writing as therapy, but somewhere between recommendation and practice, the notes transformed. She's not processing trauma anymore. She's documenting it. Conversations with palace officials, threats disguised as concern, security changes she never requested. In her 1995 Panorama interview, she'd tell Martin Bashir about feeling hunted. That wasn't metaphor, it was testimony. McGrady realizes she's building an evidence file, preparing for exposure or protection, maybe both. She shows him a note dated 3 months ahead. To be opened if. The rest is blank. McGrady thinks she's paranoid from tabloid pressure, photographers stalking her, headlines dissecting her every move. He's wrong. She's tracking specific patterns, security detail rotations, car assignments before travel, who accesses what information when. The 3 a.m. kitchen visits aren't breakdowns, they're operational security, and she's just made McGrady part of it. Early 1994. Diana becomes aware someone's monitoring her beyond the usual palace oversight. Security logs show access patterns that don't match standard protocol. outsiders reviewing her movements, her schedule, her protection details. The kitchen visits intensify to 4, sometimes 5 times weekly. McGrady notices her checking windows before speaking, listening for footsteps in distant corridors. She starts making copies of the notes, hiding duplicates in different locations throughout Kensington Palace. What McGrady doesn't know yet, MI5 would later confirm surveillance on Diana during this exact period, though they'd claim it was routine monitoring of a high-profile royal. She's not the only one keeping records. Someone else is writing things down, tracking the same pattern she's documenting. Her protection officer notices she's building something, a timeline, a case file, insurance against claims of instability. The woman the world sees on magazine covers, radiant and charitable, spends her nights creating a paper trail of self-defense. One note McGrady finds tucked behind the industrial mixer mentions strict security before international travel. Specific dates, specific personnel changes, all documented with precision that suggests she knows exactly what she's protecting herself against. Ken Worf, Diana's protection officer through the early 1990s, sees the 3 a.m. pattern in security reports and asks McGrady what's happening. McGrady shows him one note Diana left behind, a detailed account of a conversation with a senior palace official, time-stamped, witnessed, documented like a legal deposition. Worf recognizes what she's creating: insurance. The notes aren't emotional outbursts, they're evidence. Who said what, when, in whose presence. One entry describes a security detail being stripped before scheduled travel, the kind of detail that sounds paranoid until you're the protection officer who knows such changes are never random. Worf photographs several notes with a pocket camera, creating his own file. Is he protecting her or protecting himself? The question hangs unanswered. Diana trusts him more than most palace personnel, but trust in her world is relative, measured, strategic. The notes serve multiple purposes now. Her protection, his documentation, a distributed record that can't be disappeared if only one person holds it. Worf keeps his copies separate from official records. Some truths, he'd learned in royal service, need unofficial channels. The official ones have too many people watching, and not all of them have Diana's interests at heart. April 1994. McGrady realizes the pattern hiding in plain sight. Diana's kitchen visits always follow specific events. Formal palace dinners, family gatherings, private meetings with officials. She processes trauma by writing immediately after, while details stay sharp. The notes are time-stamped, cross-referenced to her public schedule, published weekly in the court circular. Anyone who knows where to look can verify when she was where, doing what, officially. Her private notes fill the gaps between public appearances, documenting what happened behind closed doors. She's creating simultaneous alibi and evidence, proving she was present for conversations she's recording, establishing credibility for claims that might otherwise seem unbelievable. McGrady finds a note she forgot, dated October 1993. If my car crashes, start with the brakes. 2 years before her famous letter to butler Paul Burrell saying almost identical words. The repetition isn't paranoia, it's pattern recognition. She sees something coming, something she can't stop, but refuses to face unprepared. The 3 a.m. kitchen visits weren't nervous breakdowns. They were method. Systematic documentation disguised as therapeutic writing, hidden in the one room without cameras, witnessed by the one staff member whose job keeps him silent and available at all hours. June 1995. A palace staff member enters the kitchen during one of Diana's sessions, unannounced and unexpected. Diana scrambles, knocking over a water glass, trying to hide the notes. Papers scatter, some landing in the spreading puddle. The staff member sees them, asks if everything's all right with manufactured concern. Diana forces a smile, says she's just writing letters to the boys. The staff member leaves. Next day, Diana's private secretary requests kitchen access logs. Who's been entering when, especially during unusual hours? McGrady receives a quiet warning. Perhaps less accommodation of late-night requests would be appropriate. Diana tells McGrady directly, "They're trying to make me seem unstable." She's not wrong. The concerned staff member was recently transferred from Charles's household. The timing isn't coincidental. McGrady helps her salvage the wet notes, drying them carefully on the kitchen radiator. Blue ink runs but stays legible. Dates, names, quotes preserved. Diana photographs each one with a small camera before the ink fades completely. She's learned from close calls. One copy isn't enough. One location isn't safe. The distributed insurance system expands. Some notes go to her lawyer, some to trusted friends outside palace control. Some stay with McGrady, hidden in places kitchen staff wouldn't think to search. August 1995. Diana reveals the full scope to McGrady. The notes aren't just personal anguish documented. They contain detailed records of conversations about the problem of Diana, how palace officials, advisors, and family members discussed her as a liability requiring management. Security changes she never requested but were implemented anyway. Financial access restrictions disguised as simplification. Threats wrapped in concern for her mental health. In November 1995, she'd tell the world in her Panorama interview, "There were 3 of us in this marriage." But the notes reveal more players, advisors, officials, security personnel, all with overlapping interests in containing or controlling her public presence. McGrady reads one entry describing a conversation where someone suggested an accident being preferable to extended scandal. The date predates her separation by months. He realizes she's not paranoid. She's recording actual threats, actual conversations, actual patterns of institutional pressure designed to isolate and discredit her. He thinks briefly about showing these to police, believing official channels would protect her. Diana shakes her head. "They'll say I'm unstable, that I'm inventing persecution. Who do you think they'll believe? A princess with documented bulimia and depression, or the palace officials with decades of spotless service?" She's not wrong. The institution protects itself first. December 1995, post-Panorama. Diana's kitchen visits become frantic. 2, sometimes 3 notes per night. McGrady notices she's addressing them to specific recipients now. One set for William and Harry, tender and explanatory. One set for her lawyer, Anthony Julius, clinical and evidential. One set marked public record, comprehensive and damning. The handwritten note has evolved from therapy to testament to insurance policy. Julius receives the first sealed envelope with explicit instructions. Open only if I die unexpectedly. Diana's creating distributed insurance. Multiple copies, multiple holders, geographical separation. If something happens to one set, others remain. She tells McGrady, "They can't disappear all of them, that's the point." 3 identical envelopes sit on the marble counter. Different names, same blue Smythson stationery. The familiar scent of quelque fleur mixed with kitchen stainless steel and floor cleaner. Diana's evening gown brushes the floor as she seals each envelope with precision. This isn't desperation, it's preparation. Methodical, strategic, coldly rational despite the emotional weight each note carries. She's building a dead man's switch. Revelation triggered by silence, by absence, by the very outcome she's documenting as possibility. If you're hooked now, wait till you see how the palace responds when they realize what she's done. Early 1996. The palace increases pressure systematically. Diana's private secretary is replaced without consultation. Kitchen access becomes formalized, meaning monitored, logged, restricted. McGrady receives new protocols. Report all late-night visits, unusual behavior, concerning conversations. He's being converted from confidant to informant. Diana stops coming to the kitchen. She finds new locations, palace gardens at dawn, her car parked in secluded areas, even bathrooms during official functions. The notes continue, but McGrady no longer witnesses their creation. August 1996. The divorce finalizes. Diana loses her Royal Highness title, gains financial settlement, and continued Kensington Palace residence. The day before she officially moves her primary documentation out of palace grounds, she tells McGrady, "Keep your copies safe." He doesn't understand until later. Inside a cookbook she'd signed for him months earlier, he finds 14 folded notes tucked between pages. Duplicates he never knew she'd given him. The handwriting is hers. The dates span 2 years. The content is explosive. Conversations about security failures being useful, financial pressure being motivational, isolation being therapeutic. She'd given him insurance without telling him, converted a cookbook into evidence storage, made him a repository without his knowledge. Smart. If he didn't know he had them, he couldn't accidentally reveal them under pressure. August 31st, 1997. Diana dies in a Paris car crash. McGrady learns via television, watching the same footage replay endlessly. The tunnel, the wreckage, the impossible finality. He doesn't sleep for 3 days. September 1997. He retrieves the hidden notes from the cookbook, reads them fully for the first time with new context. The pattern she documented is there, clear and systematic. Security changes before travel. Car maintenance schedules altered. Protection details modified without explanation. One note dated December 1996 reads, "They will try to make it look like an accident." Another describes her car being tampered with after routine service. Specific dates, specific garage, specific personnel. The famous letter she wrote to butler Paul Burrell about car crash fears? These notes, predated by years, show the fear wasn't sudden paranoia, but documented pattern recognition. McGrady spreads the notes across his kitchen table. Blue ink faded but legible. Quelques fleurs scent barely perceptible after years. Her handwriting, once shaking with emotion, now steady as evidence. The 3 a.m. kitchen visits were her witness protection program, self-administered, self-documented, distributed across trusted individuals who didn't fully understand what they were protecting until she was gone. Too late to prevent, just early enough to question official narratives about accidents and tragedy and unfortunate coincidence. 1997 to 2003. McGrady keeps the notes hidden, moving them 3 times for safety as investigations multiply. French authorities, British police, official inquiries, everyone searching for explanations, most finding convenient answers. He considers coming forward, but remembers Diana's instruction embedded in one note: only if they try to bury it completely. The investigations proceed. Paparazzi blamed, driver blamed, tunnel blamed, mechanical failure dismissed, security failures attributed to cost-cutting and administrative oversight. Nothing systematic, nothing intentional, just tragic coincidence. The notes in McGrady's possession tell a different story. But who would believe a palace chef over official inquiries? 2004. Paul Burrell's trial for allegedly stealing Diana's possessions becomes media spectacle. Letters emerge. Diana's handwriting analyzing her fears, her isolation, her belief she was targeted. Media frenzy follows. McGrady realizes his notes are more detailed, more systematic, more damning than anything Burrell possessed. Operation Paget, the British investigation into conspiracy theories around Diana's death, interviews palace staff extensively. McGrady waits for his summons. It never comes. His testimony is deemed not relevant to the inquiry's scope. Either they don't know he has the notes, or someone knows and wants his evidence excluded. He can't determine which possibility is worse. The notes remain in his possession, moved again, sealed in waterproof containers, stored separately from anything that could identify their origin or content. Some truths wait for institutional permission to be heard. Others wait for the right moment, the right audience, the right political climate to become undeniable rather than dismissible as conspiracy. McGrady publishes his memoir about serving the royal family, includes stories about Diana's 3 a.m. kitchen visits. He describes finding her crying, writing, struggling with food and fear and isolation. The public reaction is warm, touching stories about the people's princess, humanizing details about her private struggles. But he doesn't reveal the full content of the notes. He doesn't name the names she named, quote the threats she documented, specify the security failures she tracked with forensic precision. The handwritten notes remain in private possession, their most explosive content protected by his silence. Public reaction treats his revelations as grief coping, touching but not particularly significant. The truth underneath, that the notes contain specific documentation of systematic pressure, institutional threats, and security manipulations, stays buried. Diana's last note to McGrady, written July 1997, just weeks before her death, sits in his safe. "If something happens, you'll know it wasn't an accident. You saw how it built. The blue ink has faded to gray. The Smythson stationery has yellowed. The scent of quelques fleurs is gone. But the words remain, testimony in cursive, evidence in personal handwriting. She wasn't paranoid. She was preparing. There's a difference." The same handwritten note from that first 3 a.m. encounter in August 1993, the one she held with shaking hands while mascara streaked her face, he still has it. What seemed like emotional breakdown then reads like prophecy now. Some truths wait for the right moment. The notes are still sealed, and maybe, McGrady thinks, some nights they should stay that way. Not because the truth doesn't matter, but because Diana understood something about power in institutions and official narratives that most people never learn. Being right doesn't protect you. Sometimes it just makes you a better target.